this thing, I have to pick up my daughters because they called and said that somebody was following them in downtown Dumaguete, a semi-dark place. So I have to drive quick and brought my Shaolin stick, Okay. So I apologize for that. But anyway, we're not going to make this very long tonight. Usually it's a little late, but at least we can start with a basic introduction. So good evening to everyone. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat, mga kapatid. I hope God have opened what has been a tight and difficult door regarding COVID, na nandiyan na kayo ngayon sa situation na mayroon ng mga face-to-face na class. Itong sa atin, we can still do this online because it's quite, I don't know, maybe we are about 800 kilometers away from you all, So we are glad we have this technology. Okay? So if madungog na ko do? Okay na sa tanan? Okay. Maybe some of us are thinking, how come we will include psychology in the Bible? And I think even in our Bible colleges where Brother John and I graduated, we never have a psychology course. Maybe some offered it now, but we never have. And maybe some of us are wondering, do we need that? Is the Bible not enough? Well, the Bible is sufficient. It is thoroughly furnished. If we study, for instance, speech, homiletics, or go to a Bible college, those are just the so-called means that will expedite so that we can reach the end, So it's a matter of looking at it. Psychology is not the end. This is just a means. We just hope that psychology can help us even understand better a lot of things in the Bible, and also when we interact with the world. I've been reading, even going to Google's about the connection of Bible and psychology, and man, they have these Bible scholars have shown like 60 to 70 verses that are so-called psychology relevant verses. They do not mention psychology, but they are really psychology, And I don't have to cite a lot. You have the option to go to Google later on and look it for yourself about biblical psychology or psychology and the Bible. But anyway, I'm going to cite two, which is Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, which is whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely, and things like those. That's psychology, That has to do with meditation. That has to do with about thinking positive and just focus on things that are encouraging, and also Romans, mention about that conflicting forces within us. Like, for instance, there are things that we know we have to do, and yet our feeling are saying, don't do it. On the other hand, there are also things that we don't supposed to do, but there's a drive, there's an urge to say, do it, So those are just two of the example. And, psychology really, I would say, if I might use the word encompass, it touches so many areas of our lives. Look at this. There is a business psychology, psychology in business, like the reason why they just, when a price is 250 or just maybe 200, but they put their 199.95. That's business psychology. If it will appear like little, even just 5 centavos or 1 peso, people will have that just that so-called instant, I would say, feeling, and the process in their mind, oh, it's cheaper because it doesn't reach 200. There is psychology in attraction, even falling in love. There's psychology in corporations. You know, they have industrial psychology, psychology in among, you know, military. There's even in applying to become a policeman or army, you have to go through a neuropsychology testing. There are just so many, you know. So I would say this, no need, needless to say, that psychology is just all around us. And I would like to start by saying I'm not going to give you instant definition of psychology tonight, because that has been overdone, and actually we jump to the idea is this is a the study of human behavior and things like that. I'm not going to prematurely give you the definition until we will process and cover some of these foundation and fundamental backgrounds of psychology. You know, if you will ask me what is one of my regret in the Bible College, it offered us so many things. We learned so much, and we're very grateful for that. But one thing that I regret a little bit is I wish they told us psychology, you know, because we use a lot of psychology in reaching out to people, in helping people, in preaching the gospel. There's a need of psychology. Even preachers, in giving the lessons, we need psychology. You know, just like in psychology, of course. Okay, it goes back to my mind again. Even in communication, there is psychology. There's a special subject now. If you take up your master's, that is psychology of communication. You know, very important. First, middle, and last. If yours, the very first thing you say is very, very important, and also the last thing you say. So anyway, those are just some of the example. So I would like to ask, are you all for this? Do you really want to bear with me studying psychology for the next few weeks? Okay ba?
Yes, brother.
Okay.
Opo.
And I know some of you has already, you've been through college, you have psychology 1. It's like a little review, but maybe with a different emphasis. We'll try to make this a little bit in the Philippine context. That's the goal, okay? All of our psychology, just like engineering, nursing, chemistry, and law, are really, you know, we appreciate them. Usually they started from the United States or Europe, including psychology. We would not say, oh, we created psychology ourselves. We don't need the West anymore because we have specialized and have mastered it, and we even do much better job here in the Philippines. No, we will not do that, okay? Honestly speaking, we will not be probably studying psychology right now without the United States, without Germany, okay? And the United States and France. So we look to that, you know, like every thing that happened in the past are very important foundation. We would not overlook that. In fact, learning the past, going back to the past will make us understand better the here and now, the present, you know. In fact, psychology now has evolved, you know. it was not like this when I studied this in the 80s and in the 90s, you know. But it doesn't prove that the past is wrong. It's still correct, only they have done more research that really expand, you know, exponentially, if not dramatically, psychology, which is for our good. It's really very, very beneficial to us now. Okay, so let us start with the past. Okay, you know, in the past, even before the time of the Lord Jesus Christ, we have these great thinkers like Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. They are philosophers, and yet they focus a lot on the human mind, about values, about behavior. They study about the body, the mind, and even the soul. Um, the that's part of the questions that they have raised and they are trying to explain. So it was already there from the very beginning. In fact, even before these philosophers, the Bible already has a lot of those, because these things are really, they are here. It's like the air and the water. Only modern psychologists define them and put label on them. But the more we study this, I guarantee, the more we realize, oh, ganito pala. Nandiyan ito sa Bible, ha? Okay. Alam ko Friday ngayon, we've been to our job. Let's do a short guided meditation, okay? If you are there right now, I want you to relax and then close your eyes. You just imagine that the wind is blowing to your face, to your hair, and slowly it goes down to your arm, to your chest, to your back, to your legs. And then we'll take a deep breath, just about 7 times, okay? I want everybody to inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Okay, I think, did I do this? I forgot. I've been to so many places already, but did I took you to a colder place last time? Did you do into the place where it's really cold? Na nahuman na to na, Klo? Nakaato na ba ta? Have we been to a colder place yet?
Murag, we had
Would you remember? Have we been to Alaska or Colorado in our guided meditation? Not yet. Okay. Now, let us all get ready because we are going to a place that maybe we have never been before. Okay? All our bags are packed. And then from Salawag and parts of Cavite and other areas, we are riding on the car, van, taxi, and our goal is to go to Naiya. So we are already driving on a very familiar place. At least it's nice. The traffic is not that bad because of that new road system that can take us straight without traffic to the airport. But still, it's kind of, we know it's kind of hot. Just so many vehicles that we can see in the arterial roads below and other things, other areas. But anyway, we reach the airport. We all congregate and assemble, and we are ready to take the Boeing 747 United Airlines that will take us to Los Angeles. So we are there online, showing our passport, showing our ticket, and slowly the gate is open, boarding us. Then we all find our seat. It's nice plane, huge. It has even like a second floor on top of the pilot area where the business class people are. But we were taking the third class. But it's just nice, cool, clean, and we can smell even the food that they are preparing while we were on board. So we sit down, we find a spot on the overhead compartment to put our carry-on luggage, and then we take a seat, put on that seat belt, then we open this plastic where those headphones are being stored, and put on the headphone, plug it in to the monitor. Each seat has its own TV monitor. So we listen to music, and finally the pilot was announcing, okay, we're about to take off. Everybody fasten your seatbelt. So the plane was just slowly going into a position, and then when it find its right position, it just ran so fast, and finally the speed is just highly accelerated, and when we take off airborne, we fall asleep. Then when we wake up, they feed us so much in the menu, from the Oriental food, adobo, noodles, fish, to the Western food, American food of steak, rolls, butter and cheese. They have everything. So we eat. After we eat, we're thinking, wow, we just fell asleep. And we accelerate this meditation that we reach Los Angeles Airport. When we reach the Los Angeles Airport, we pass through immigration and custom and pick up our bags and our carry-on. And then we took another flight that will take us to the airport of Denver, Colorado. It was even cold in Los Angeles, but thinking about Colorado, it's kind of those of us who heard what Colorado is, that there is ice and snow the whole year. It's like we could only feel the chill even reaching there. So the plane took off for another 4 hours. It landed in the airport of Denver, Colorado. Some of us are still in shorts even, and t-shirt. When we get off, there's a nice bus with 2 tourist guides welcoming us to enter the bus. And man, the snow are just falling. Different shapes falling to the ground. It even, some of the snow really literally hits our head, but it doesn't hurt because it's like powdery. It touches our face and just our arms, and we can feel the bitter cold of the wind chill. And the tour guides are telling us, okay, everybody fast, get on the bus. We enter the bus, and the bus has heater, so it helps us, but still we can feel the cold. So the driver took us to a big Walmart where we can buy heavier and thicker clothes, jackets, sweaters, and sweatpants, long johns. So we're there. We went to the fitting room and put on those things after we pay. And then when we got out, we were already transformed. We look like we blend to the people in Colorado with thick jackets. So we went towards the bus. And when we were in the bus, it took us to this foot of a high mountain called Aspen. Oh, it reminds us even the song of John Denver about Aspen. And in fact, the house of John Denver, his mountain house is over there in Aspen. But in order to reach Aspen, we have to ride on this very powerful train. It goes vertical, bring us all the way to this more than 10,000 10,000 feet high mountain. As the train goes, we can just see snow in both sides, ice and snow. And then we can see the pine trees. The pine trees are just unbelievable, just like what we saw in the movie. So green, and then the leaves are covered with white snow. It's December anyway, about to be Christmas time, until we reach the plateau of this mountain peak in Aspen, Colorado, and then we get off. It's about dinner time, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then the guide says, "Let's go in the restaurant." It was so cold, snow just kept falling and falling, and man, some of the snow really hit our face and our hands. Some of us said we should have bought some gloves, but we were okay when we entered that big restaurant made of woods. It's like a big log cabin, and inside there's a fireplace that uses pine tree. We can smell the aroma of the pine wood, and then we can smell just amazing food in the US. The smell of steak, butter, mashed potato, pies, cakes, cookies, and everything we want were there. So we just eat and eat. And after that, there's still daylight because it was almost 7 o'clock. But during winter time, the sun will last longer even until 8 o'clock in the evening. So it was still bright even at 7 o'clock. And the guide says, "Okay, everybody go to your respective log cabin for accommodation." We went and then just pull our suitcases, and man, the snow is already almost to our knees. It's just kind of cold, but we were all excited. We never have anything like this in Metro Manila or Cavite. It's just unbelievable. Then some of us were smart enough to even buy milk while at Walmart, like condensed milk. And then we open it, and then some of us get that bucket and fill it with snow white, the white snow. And then we pour this condensed milk to the bucket, to the clean bucket, and mix it. And man, it's snow ice cream. And we share to everybody, we eat and just laugh like we were little kids. And then the sun just slowly, uh, uh, the sun is slowly sit. It was sitting down. So we were tired from the trip. We fall asleep. And while before going to bed, we can still see the snow just keep falling and falling on the outside. We can see it through the French window made of glass. It's just so relaxing. Looking all the trees, the pine trees and all, the ice and the snow. Okay, open your eyes now, please. Okay, are you all still there? Hello?
So, very long traveling.
Okay,
Nakatulog.
nakatulog. Okay, so
Okay.
maganda yung sa snow. Yeah. Malamig. Masarap yung snow cream, ice cream na gawa sa snow. Anyway, going back to this, like I said, it started really, the concept of psychology started from, it's really in the Bible, but the philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle have started discussing this, thinking about this. Then later on, in somewhere in France, this is on the 17th century, there's a man named uh, Rene Descartes. Actually, maybe that's how come we have adopted the word Descartes. Okay, Rene, literally it is Rene Descartes, but French people omit the last letter. So instead of saying Descartes, it is Descartes. Instead of saying appetite, they drop the last letter T, so bon appetit. Instead of saying sans, you just say sun. Like sans rival, they will just say sun rival. So this is Rene Descartes in the 17th century. He started pushing this idea about human behavior, that our human behavior, our attitude really is innate. That means it is inherited. So his concept or his theory is called the nativist theory. Okay, remember Rene Descartes, nativist theory, like native. That it is this that our view is a view that our ideas are innate. Then later on, over the years, there's a man named John Locke. John Locke, L-O-C-K-E, okay? John Locke also gave a theory that our attitude, our behavior, or knowledge is not innate. It is acquired, okay? So there's a big difference there. For Descartes, it is innate. It is inborn. For John Locke, it is acquired through experiences and interacting with the world. Okay. Did you know that until now, there's still a big debate of this? Only it is called in a nicer way now. Nature versus nurture. Have you heard that? Nature versus nurture, like as far as our learning, our attitude, our behavior is whether it is by nature or by nurture. Is it inborn or it is because of the environment? They are still debating these two schools of thought. Descartes was the one who proposed it is native, it is inborn. While John Locke says it is learned by experience and interaction. So nature versus nurture. Then there's I would rather subscribe to one of the latest, not really very late, but just the last 20 years. Somebody came up with the idea that there's no debate really between nature and nurture, because the two is just like a cha-cha. It's like a dance. So we become who we are because of both genetics, because of innate tendencies, and also with influence by the environment. I would rather believe that. I would rather, I would say, I incline to that. We are both, okay? But still, that is just introduction. We will discuss a little more about this later, okay? That man really is a product of both nature and nurture, innate tendencies and through experience and interaction. So whatever your conviction with that or your own self-analysis, I respect that. And later on, we will discuss some more. Okay, like I said, they are still debating. They are still debating between the two, nurture versus nurture. Then in 1879, there is a German named Wilhelm Wundt. Okay, Wilhelm. The spelling is Wilhelm, and the last name is Wundt. Wundt. Okay, Wilhelm Wundt. 1879. He founded formally. He founded psychology. He is considered to be the father of psychology. And he was saying that psychology is an academic discipline. It is an academic discipline. And he established his psychological laboratory at the University of Leipzig in Germany. That's the limitation of our class. I wish it can be in PowerPoints like these names, but I will trust you can Google it later on. Okay. He established his psychological laboratory in the University of Leipzig, Leipzig, in Germany. His research are very interesting and still true today. Okay, like I said, no one really is not important. It doesn't mean that we are learning more now that the past is not, because it is still very true today. He made so much study. His primary concern is the senses. Remember the senses? The 5 senses: touch, taste, smell, hearing, and seeing. So it's more on that. And he emphasized more on the vision, on the seeing. Okay, that's very important in his study, the vision. And then also he studied about attention, about emotion, and memory. All of these things I'm talking about is still true today. Like the 5 senses. Then Wundt have an American student. Okay, one of his students is an American, whose name is Granville Stanley Hall. Just remember Stanley Hall, just like City Hall. Okay, so Stanley Hall had studied with Wundt at Wundt's psychological laboratory in the University of Leipzig. Okay, somebody is calling. But am I cut off, or you still hear me?
Are you okay?
You still okay? Good. Wow, thank you, Lord. So Stanley Hall in 1883, about 4 years later, started the first psychology laboratory in the United States. And he was with Wundt. So he learned so much, and he started in the US at Johns Hopkins University. That's why if you heard Johns Hopkins is one of the best in the world. Hospital, medical school, and that's where the first psychology laboratory. It's very interesting that in the Philippines also, we have an experimental psychologist trained in the University of Chicago in the 20s, when he returned, and I'll reserve it later on, because the first psychology laboratory was established by that psychologist. So we have psychologists in the early 20s. But could you guess where it was first established? Okay, I reserve it for later on. Okay, this is very interesting study. So that's in the United States. It started in 1883 by Stanley Hall, and then Wundt has another student whose name is James Cattell. Okay, James Cattell. Cattell. James Cattell. Cattell. And he was the first psychology professor in the United States in 1888. So Stanley Hall was not a professor, but just started a psychological laboratory in Johns Hopkins. And the first professor is James Cattell. Then in the middle of the somewhere in England, somebody also, because it's like that. There are great thinkers, especially during this time. There's somebody who was also independently studying psychology in England, and that is Sir Francis Galton. Okay, Sir Francis Galton. His study is very important and it's very relevant. That's why I'm going to include him, because in 1869, Sir Galton studied individual differences. Have you heard about that? Maybe you did. That there are individual differences. I'm a big believer on that. Even twins are quite distinct and different. Okay? We cannot compare. That's why comparing somebody to somebody sometimes is not the best idea. Okay? So this guy, Sir Galton, studied about individual differences, and he is responsible in the development of intellectual tests. That's why you have IQ tests today, you have personality tests, your aptitude tests, all those tests, neuropsychological tests. It's because of this man in the 19th or in 1869. Sir Galton. Okay, you can just scribble in your notes and look at his name there later on in Google, okay, to have the right spelling. Then another man in the picture of psychology came up, and that is Titchener. Titchener. In the latter part of the 19th century, come up with this very important, okay? He is one of the students who is trained by Wundt, the father of psychology. Titchener proposed the theory of structuralism. Like structure and then ALISM, structuralism. It was introduced by him. It is structuralism specified mental structure and analyze the basic elements of mental life. So it's more of the mental analysis, that we have a structure, okay? There is a perimeter in our thinking, and then it needs to be analyzed. So he started with that. That later on influenced a lot in our psychology. In the examination, he even said about introspection. Means looking inside, introspection. So maybe that rings a bell a lot. We are doing that when we focus our attention to ourselves. It's called introspection. The examination of one's own emotional states and mental processes was the structural psychologist's major method of data collection. So introspection become like the arm, the instrument that Titchener proposed. We have to analyze ourselves. In fact, we do this sometimes. We really do self-counseling. We start looking into our feeling, and then just do some analysis. That can help. That can be healthy, and yet we need more than that, though. Okay, but he mentioned about introspection. Then later on, we have the man called William James, an American. Um, he said that pure analytic character of structuralism, uh, in fact, William James became the critic of um, Titchener, of Titchener. Okay, so this is sounds like familiar. You know, sometimes we tend to criticize, maybe in a healthy way, that's not enough. You know, there's something else need to be done. So here is this man, William James, who said um, he is actually a psychologist from Harvard. You know, but still from the influence of James and Cattell. But in later on in Harvard, they have started psychology program, and he's a product of Harvard in the early part of the century, about 1920 to 30. He advocated another school of thought known as functionalism. Okay, so for him, it's not just trying to analyze ourselves; it's also talking about functions of the mind and behavior to adapt to the environment. It's like we learn to adapt. If the environment is really tough, we need to adapt to that. That's functional psychology. I don't have to be tough also. Maybe I want to be a little bit flexible, you know, because everybody here are different. They are very tough, kind of wild people here. So we don't have also to be tough like them, you know. So the idea is um, he introduced functionalism, learning to adapt to the situation, function of the mind and behavior to adapt to the environment. Functionalism or functionalists would ask, they will ask this question, what do people do and why do they do it? We still do that today. Well, why did you do what you do? When in my group processing, I tend to ask this, you know, what made you do what you did? Things like that. So then here comes the revolutionary, very, I would say revolutionary, because his his story made so much impact in the criminal system, in schools, even in disciplining kids. This is John Watson, John B. Watson. He is the father of behaviorism. Behaviorism. He challenged both the functional and the structural or the introspection concept. He said both the functionalism and introspection are unscientific. Watson said because uh, you cannot, this would not qualify as a science because Watson desired that psychology will become a science. He said, in order for it to be a science, things should be uh, observable, that behavior should be observable. He said, you cannot experiment what's in the mind. You cannot experiment about the attitude to adapt, but what you can experiment is the behavior. His school of thought caught on rapidly like wildfire in uh, about 1920.
Ano?
1920. Behavioristic
Wala ka, Brad.
Na-mute ka, Brother Richard. Mute ka.
Oo.
Brother Richard, unmute please. Nakamute ka? Nakamute.
Kana, madungog na ko?
Okay, okay, kana na.
Okay, sorry kayo.
Sige lang.
So here it is. John Watson is a behaviorist. He said, for psychology to become a science, we need to focus on the behavior because it's only the behavior that can be experimented. He said, you cannot experiment the mind. You cannot touch the mind. You cannot see the mind, but you can see and experiment behavior. So he really likes the Russian scientist, physiologist. He's not, this Russian scientist is not a psychologist, but he has a study on classical conditioning, the study of the mice and the rat. That is Pavlov, okay? Like there's, for instance, a mouse, when you give food to the mouse, when the mouse come to the food, you ring the bell. So you associate the bell with the giving of food. Every time you ring the bell, the mouse will already come towards the area where there's food in the cage. So every time the ring bells, you give food. So the mouse learned that, that when there are even times when you ring the bell without even food, the mice would still come. So this kind of conditioning. He studied a lot of animals because that's where behaviorism centered as far as their experiment is concerned, that they apply to humans. And also another guy they study is B.F. Skinner, the operant conditioning. So like for instance, a rat, when it doesn't perform, would not come to the food, they will put some kind of electrodes, electric shock, okay, give pain. But when the rat will do the trick, will come and eat the food, they give more food. That is conditioning. So that's how we come up with the so-called is and R psychology, stimulus and response, reward and punishment. Maybe we are all aware about that. Good behavior is rewarded and bad behavior is punished, right? Could you imagine our society now? How we mess up? Because bad behavior is rewarded, really. It's not right. When you do wrong, it's like people will praise you, you will be rewarded. But when you do what is right, now you are punished. Okay? People don't like you, your life will be threatened. So it's really, there's a mess-up in the world today, But going back to these fundamentals, that's really true. Stimulus and response, reward and punishment, that is Watson. So behaviorists found it agreeable to discuss psychological phenomena as beginning with a stimulus and ending with a response. Stimulus, response. Like for instance, somebody, if Sister Chuna is cooking a very pork and chicken adobo combined with all the how do you call those leaves? The laurel leaves or the paminta and the little vinegar and the soy sauce. And Brother John arrived and even hungry. Man, what is the stimulus? It's the food. He can smell it and he can see it, the adobo. He opened the pot. Oh man, the sense of sight and the sense of smell. So that's the stimulus, the food. And then what is the response? Eat. Okay? It's very simple. The concept of Watson is still very true today. Okay? That's why I said it's not fair to come up with a definition right away, because all of this has really played a very important role. Watson concept is still true. Even in the prison system, when somebody committed a crime, then he has to be punished. But now punishment, usually in America, is no longer commensurate to the crime that has been committed. Even murder is just given 5 years. That's not commensurate anymore, So, but in the 1920s, America are more strict. They are really influenced with this. even as here in the Philippines, that we do punishment and stuff. So that's Watson, with a stimulus and ending with a response. Stance that it's called the is and R psychology, stimulus and response psychology, behaviorism. This is where they really focus on experimental psychology, that about emphasize on the empirical, something you can experience, some things that you can replicate. So that's it. And Watson is a very vocal person. It's almost like he sounds like the early psychology that focus on the introspection, about self-analysis. Maybe it's not the way to go. It should be behaviorism, because you can make psychology as a science, to can be experimented, can be even tested in the laboratory, so to speak. Then here is another guy, a German, I'll almost simultaneously with Watson. He's in America, but this guy is in Germany. He proposed that behaviorism, he proposed a school of thought concerned with
Well,
the
parang
organ
nakatapos mo na.
with the organization of mental processes. This is where we have the word on German called Gestalt. His view, the view of Wertheimer, Max Wertheimer, the spelling is Wertheimer. His view is Gestalt psychology. Actually, Gestalt means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That you cannot isolate one experience after the other. It's like the whole. For Wertheimer, the whole is more important. That every part play a very important role. The uh, the whole, yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of its part, and it is the school of thought concerned with the so-called configuration, like getting all the parts together in order to come up with the whole picture. The experience cannot be broken down into smaller units. So he's more like the neutral kind of guy. Okay, Watson, you are correct, so to speak. Okay, it's like this. My interpretation, Watson, you are correct. It's very important that we can experiment behaviors, use animals, rats and mice and rabbits. Because when applied to human being, when a little boy is doing the right thing, doing his job and giving money afterwards, the more he will do it, the more he will work hard. The same thing with compensation. When laborers today are only paid 100 per day, they don't like to work. They will produce less, but if you pay them 1,000 a day, the more they will work. So it's like that. The stimulus and response. Reward, good behavior is rewarded, bad behavior is penalized. So for Wertheimer, all are important. The psychoanalysis, or the introspection, the structuralism of want and others, they are very important. So as behaviorism of Watson is important for him, the whole is important. It every part contribute to the whole, and that will make it very effective. So if you ask me, when I take up psychology, that is in our T-shirt. I remember in the 80s, okay, that says the whole is greater than the sum of its part. I'm a big believer on that. Okay, so then wow, slowly we'll come to this person, very popular. In fact, he is considered to be the genius of psychologists. Dr. Sigmund Freud, who come up with the concept of psychoanalysis. He believes that human behavior is deeply influenced by unconscious thoughts. Could you imagine that? Our behavior and attitude now is driven by unconscious thoughts that we don't even know, subconscious, like thoughts, impulses, and desires, especially those concerning sex thoughts and aggression. If you remember Freud, he's the one who introduced the id, the ego, and superego. The id is really the one who has all the desires, doesn't care whether to do, as long as he can fulfill the desires, even if it is wrong. But the superego is the conscience that limits what the superego do, or that what the superego is the one that limits what the id will do. It's the conscience, okay? While the ego is the neutral, okay, between the two. That's the self. Very interesting. We don't have to go deeper on that right now because that will fall under advanced psychology. I'll just give you a little introduction about that. But Freud is known for his so-called uh, uh, psychosexual development. Yeah, like for instance, he said that we go to the stages, like we have the so-called the oral stage, where like it is from birth to 1 year old. Then we have the anal stage from 1 year old to age 7. Okay, let me repeat this. Okay, Freud is known for this. His psychosexual stages, that at birth we are on the oral stage. It is from birth to 1 year old. Then the second is the anal stage, referring to the anus from 1 to 3 years old. The third is the phallic stage. It is from 3 to 6. And then the fourth is the latency stage from 6 years old to puberty. And then 5, the genital stage, probably from puberty to adulthood. Anyway, I'm going to discuss this when we are already together face to face, okay? I'm just showing you the very concept of Freud. Freud really has a lot of ideas that are very useful. When you cannot deal with the present, when the person is so depressed today, no matter what you do, and it happened to me, no matter what I do, no matter how I do the processing and the counseling, nothing will do. He's still depressed. So I tend to say, okay, I want you to close your eyes and we'll go back to the earliest time that you experienced pain. And usually they end up at 2 or 3 years old, that they were like left behind by the parents, or they were hard, excessive spanking or using bacos. Wow, it's amazing that this unconscious is very important. Some of our behavior today is because of what happened in the past. So Freud's theory is just very unique, very original. Okay, he is the father of psychoanalysis. Okay, now we there are recent developments now at present. Okay, on psychology. I did not even have this when I studied that in the 90s. Okay. Number one, recent development. The recent development is highly cognitive. Okay, cognitive. That's the modern approach of the psychology now from early 60s to the present. Cognitive. which means it's focused on the three things: thinking, reasoning, and remembering. It's more of the mind again. It goes back from behaviorism, from the early stage of introspection, the mind, and then it was dismissed by uh, Watson as unscientific. That's why he used stimulus response, experiment, and it seems it's coming back to the mind again. So in this present time, they view human as an information processing system. We ourselves is the information processing system. Remember, I have discussed that when I was there at Brother John's place one, was that Sunday or Friday, that now they discovered that we have 100 billion cells in our brain, and it is connected by the so-called synapses, where communication and sensory, the senses will pass through, and there are only about 100 trillions of them. Okay, so just unbelievable. So it view human. That's why we are a major information processing center, much powerful than the most advanced supercomputer complex of Google, of Yahoo. Yahoo only have 2 petabytes. Word peta, that's the highest. 1 petabyte means 1 million gigabytes. Google have 2 petabytes. That means they have 2 million megabytes or something like that. And you know what? Our brain has bigger than Yahoo and Google. We have 2.5 petabytes. So this is something considered today in the modern psychology, that we ourselves, everyone, Brother John, Sheila, Neil, Sister Chuna, everybody are listening tonight. You are an information processing system. Look at that. We open our Facebook, we open our Google, and we absorb everything, and we reflect about it. It can cause us joy, it can cause us pain. So, man, this brain, we are an information processing system. Second, modern linguistics, the study of how mental structures are required to comprehend and speak our language. Okay. Modern linguistics. That's why we have languages, whether it's Tagalog is our first tongue or Cebuano, but we have second tongues. We can be bilingual, we can be multilingual. It has to do with that. Our brain has that in us. Then number 3, it is a neuropsychology. This is one of the recent development that studies neurobiological events and mental processes. There are neurobiological basis of our behavior. Yes, we learn, and the only way we will learn, the way we develop our attitudes, is because we have this neurobiological equipment in us. That's the brain. That's why I don't know, people will disagree with me. I always say, walang bubo. Nobody is really dumb or cannot understand, except maybe on reason of malnutrition. Our brain is not fully developed because we don't have enough milk or protein when we're little children, or maybe because of physical trauma. But in the normal range, walang bubo sana. Ang kailangan lang yung focus natin. Yan. So now, this is the time to come up. We are about to end, really. I have a little thing left. So what would be now the fair definition of psychology? Like I said, I don't want to jump right away that psychology is the study of human behavior. That's so easy to say, okay? But I want us to process the definition, to come up the definition by combining all the works of these pioneers of psychology, from Wundt, from Stanley Hall, from Watson to Freud, and considering all of this, we can have a configuration. Configuration means the whole. We can see a better picture. So what would be a fair definition of psychology then? Psychology, considering all the things we have discussed above, is, okay, are you ready? Is defined as the scientific study of behavior, okay? We put it there. Thus, it is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. We include that. So look at see, all of those are important. The mental processes of want, of Titchener, and the behaviorism of Watson and others, the psychoanalysis, the unconscious view of Freud, that everything came from the unconscious. I think it will be covered on this definition. Simple. It is defined as the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. Okay. Nakuha na? It is the scientific study of behavior. So, very important, scientific. Okay? And then, and mental processes, introspections, IQ testing, psychoanalysis, processing, counseling. That's why when I do this, like for the married and for the singles, there's a lot of the, there's a lot of the introspection, of the analysis here, So this is now a combination kind of definition. I repeat one more time that our definition tonight, considering all of this, is psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes, including learning, including testing, loading memory, everything, So that's it. That's our introduction. And of course, I'll just include tonight, at least to give you, to make you excited for next week, because there's a lot more. We will be focusing now to the Philippines psychology, okay? But I will start with the very first one who started psychology in the Philippines. Here is this man. I don't know where is he from. I don't have that background. Maybe you can Google it if you can. His name is Agustin Alonso. Okay? Agustin Alonso. He received his PhD on experimental psychology from the University of Chicago. Okay? So Agustin Alonso is the first Filipino who graduated PhD on experimental psychology. And he established on 1926 for the very first time the Department of Psychology at, could you guess what school in Manila? Who could guess? Okay. Somebody, okay. You will have, if I'll be able to come back there in Cavite, you can receive a Toblerone from me, okay, if you answer it correctly. He started his psychology department for the very first time in 1926 at the University of the Philippines. Okay?
Sabi na nga, Lucy.
Who was able to guess that? May nakaguess, mother? Ha?
Ako,
Sino to? Si Sheila? Sino to?
Brad,
Kayo, si Sister. Tandaan mo.
Josephine.
Kisa to do?
Josephine ba? Felix, sister.
Okay. Mayroon kang Toblerones, magbabalik ako dyan. Ano? So, yan. Amazing. 1926 pa pala itong psychology sa Pilipinas. Ano? Tapos tayo, hindi tayo nakapag aral until college na. Yung iba nga, nagiging preacher tayo, wala tayong psychology background. I tell you, this will help our Bible students tremendously. It's a big, big help because we will be able to understand basic behavior. Why do people do what they did? Bakit siya naglalaying? Bakit siya nagsalita ng bad words? Bakit siya sakim? Just so many things. Those behaviors. Very important, really. So, alam na niyo, pero marami pa tayong malalaman about Philippines. Okay? Maring ang iba nito buhay pa o patay na, or you might have read their books. I'm really impressed. We have many, many great psychologists in the Philippines. Marami. Yan. Only na we will not fail to recognize. Nagpapasalamat talaga tayo sa mga Amerikano. Most of our psychology is from them. Doon na-train ang ating mga psychologists sa Amerika. Hindi pa sabihin natin na wala. Kami lang umpisa sa Pilipinas. I don't think that's right. Okay? So, next week, we will continue focus on the Philippines. Before we'll start talking about so many things, about different theories and things. Do you have any question tonight? Adati salud sudyo, kag gagayem, kakabsat ken kabagis, natay pangutana.
Oh, questions? Kung meron.
Maring marami na kayong alam dahil sa nakakuha na kayo ng Psychology 1 sa college. Mayroong question? So anong what do you feel about our first class tonight? What do you think?